is a national week throughout the United States, and NYU has sort of exported it to its global campuses so that we can make sure that even though you're studying abroad, studying away, you still are mindful that you have your identity and how you are as a individual is affected by where you are. It's actually kind of exciting to look at it from being in Sydney and how that's affecting your identity, your salient identity. So basically being an ally is reevaluating and sort of having a look at your beliefs and values and seeing how you can act in solidarity with marginalised groups and communities.
Yeah, so the timeline of what we did for Ally Week this year was Monday we started off with a screening of a documentary. We kind of got some pizza to kind of bring kids in. And the documentary that we watched was Gaby Baby, and it's about children raised, it's a documentary from the children's perspective about them being raised in gay households. And so it was really interesting and kind of just showed the timeline, like maybe 5 different children and their timeline with their parents and their relationship with their parents was pretty typically really inspiring and really informative too. Tuesday we had a breathing room session. So one of the things that a breathing room kind of encounters is like a safe space for anybody who feels in the student population that they want to just kind of cast their social anxieties on or talk about. They kind of have that space for 30 to 45 minutes, like in just like a free reign about talking about whatever you'd like to talk about. Then Wednesday, what do we do Wednesday?
We had a bake sale,
Yeah.
So that might sound trivial, but it was actually really nice because it sort of brought community members in together to sort of bake something and have a go at some Australian treats as well. And we raised money for the Full Stop Foundation, which helps people who've been afflicted with domestic violence. The money for the Full Stop Foundation goes towards a hotline for people to call if they're suffering from domestic violence or sexual assault. So it's nice to be able to have something fun and sort of trivial and make that into something more meaningful.
Yeah.
And so
how
I think
much money did we raise?
We raised
for that?
$123, which doesn't seem in the big scheme of things a lot of money, but considering it's all just student donations.
And everything was like $1, so you had to rack it up.
Yeah, exactly. So we did well.
A lot of traffic. And then Thursday we went on a field trip.
So the Biennale is a biannual art exhibition throughout Sydney, and it's held on Cockatoo Island, which is a small island just outside the harbour. Sort of talks about the refugee crisis, and so my personal experience within the refugee realm, I was able to speak to students about my experiences on offshore detention centres, so being in Nauru and Manus Island, and sort of talking about the refugee crisis and how it afflicted Australia and still afflicts Australia, and how refugees are surviving. And so it was nice to sort of have that as a day trip out of the classroom and within Sydney Harbour. I think it's important with Ally Week, not necessarily to hold people down and force them to do something.
But just like make it available for that.
Yeah, and we had some icons of the week, Ally icons of the week. So we had Rosie Batty, who is an advocate for domestic violence within Australia. We had Linda Burney, who was the first Indigenous Australian woman in Parliament. And a few other ones from the trans community, Alex Greenwich from the LGBTQI community, all really great icons. Good to learn about the Australian perspective as well.
Yeah, and I think in our Ally Week planning, we also talked about how we didn't want Ally Week to kind of become kind of performative. So like we didn't want it to kind of emulate some sort of patting on the back of people from more privileged communities doing work, because I think that sometimes it can be geared towards that, but we also wanted to focus on the people in these communities with these experiences in these communities doing the actual work and kind of focusing the spotlight on them versus just kind of just performative allyship, because that is a very real concern when we have these kind of conversations, and we kind of wanted to steer away from that this year.
Okay, so Josh is the Global Equity Fellow.
EDI.
EDI. Here in Sydney, and he's been really great for us because being Australian, most of the staff here are Australian, I think all except for one, and so having someone that's actually living the life of a New York student, NYU student, and can actually talk to the students, that's been really, really great as well. Having an Ally Week planning committee, actually having voices from the students as well, so that we can tailor our events to students.
Just kind of incorporating that into allyship as like kind of somewhat of a student ambassador and understanding the student narrative and perspective, and to just be able to kind of help out and bring that narrative into planning and tailoring it, like Laura said, into specific things that maybe the student body needs or would prefer, that maybe be more effective for them in terms of cooperation or just really just understanding what's going on.
For me, Ally Week is important because students are within a cohort, within a community within NYU Sydney, and sometimes you can get lost within that and feel that you're almost in a little New York, little NYU. And so I think it's important for students to sort of step back and think, okay, well, I'm not in New York, I'm in Sydney. My own identity is challenged by being in Australia and having, there's different dichotomy of race, gender, even the LGBTQI community is very different here. And we've had students in the past who've wanted to be an ally to the LGBTQI community here but have forgotten that they are not Australian and therefore they need to sort of look at allyship in a different way.
I think that the future of allyship would just stay along the lines of inclusivity, and just as long as you kind of have to promote it as a resource for students to come and take advantage of, is what I really hope. And I just really also hope that they kind of take on the gearship of understanding that it's about the marginalized communities itself and not just about kind of a patting on the back type of performative allyship.
At the end of the day, it shouldn't just be a week. It should be a lifestyle. It should be not something you opt into just for one lunchtime conversation. And so hopefully, going forward, it can be something bigger than a week.